How many times have you sat there and looked at a painting that someone's doing and thought, oh, there's no way I could paint that? Well, let me tell you, this is a painting I think anybody could paint. I think you should have a go at painting next. Sit tight, I'll rewind the clock. We'll get this tutorial started. Well, welcome back to the studio. Today I'm going to be tackling another one of those Bob Ross classics. This time it's Golden Glow of Morning. And this one's been on my to-do list for a very long time. It's got all the things that I like. I know that one or two of you like as well. One of those things being, well, let me see. Does this give you a clue? Maybe a piece of sponge? Let's do a few of the actions. That's right. I'm going to be using some acrylic paints for an underpainting. I can hear one or two of you jumping for joy already. And it's a great way of getting a painting underway really quickly. Gets a bit of colour on there and a bit of structure. So let's put some acrylics on here and get it on that canvas. So let's see what I've got on my little plate here. Well, I've got some burnt sienna, some dark sienna, maybe some cad yellow deep. I found a couple of old bits of paint left in the bottoms of some acrylic tubes, some magenta colours, and I'm just going to use a piece of sponge. And if this gets too mucky, I can just change it up for something else. So I want to think about putting in the background first. Maybe I'll go for some of this pretty yellow colour. Look at that. It's like an egg yolk yellow, isn't it? A bit too yellow. Let's put a touch of that burnt sienna in there. And I'm thinking about putting in some nice background. And you'll notice as I do this, I'm continuously flipping that piece of sponge in my fingers. What I don't want to do is make a continuous pattern. So as you can see, I've put on quite a good amount of colour here. Lots of nice yellow, lots of the lovely sort of burnt sienna colours. And this section down here is going to be a reflection of the sky. Now, on Bob's original one, he just pulled down some of the brown colours into the water here, made some reflections. But I'm going to try and paint this as though you're seeing this reflected in the water. So I'm trying something a little bit different with Bob's painting. As you can see, I didn't skimp on this yellow colour because I know once I start putting the next layer of colours on, I'm going to lose a lot of this already. So I put on a little extra. I saved a few little holes in the background, maybe for some background sky. But I want to add a few little other colours as well. I pulled them out, so why not add them? And I think my bit of sponge is good to go still. So I'm going to put on a few little touches of the magentas here and there. I think just for a bit of fun. Maybe it might look a little abstract to some of you, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, because painting is a real experiment sometimes, that this will work out to be a real beautiful painting. Now, I do want to add in some of the darker tones now, so I've avoided using that dark brown colour. So I'm going to get into a little bit of that next. And try and sort of put in a little bit of depth and shadow. The brightest part of the painting is going to be here, so everything's sort of lower than that area and heading towards the sides over here, and over here going to be in a bit more darkness. So let's tap a bit of that in, and again try and think about where the waterline would be. So maybe a good idea just to map that out. It's about 1/3 and about 2/3 above. It's my classic division, isn't it? 1/3 and 2/3. It does work so very well. So there's my underpainting finished, and there's a lot of paint on here. It's really good and thick, so I'm going to give this, well, a good 45 minutes on the old special art watch here. In fact, I might even give it maybe an hour because there's some really thick chunks on there. Lots of lovely texture. Right, see you in a moment. So my canvas has been sitting for, well, a good hour now, and I just want to take a few moments to go across it with my hand. Where the acrylic is really thick, it's quite textured, and there's always a chance you might have a little sort of bubble of acrylic which has got a skin on it. When you're picking it with your fingernails, well, you find it's still wet underneath, and it's the last thing we want, with the next step being to apply some oils. And of course, because I've put down a coloured base colour here, I'm going to be using something like this, Bob Ross Liquid Clear. For obvious reasons, if I was to use liquid white, then, well, this would be a foggy day. So clear is what I'm needing. And as always, I've got some in a small airtight container, and one of the oldest Bob Ross brushes in my box. And I'm going to use this to apply a very thin, even coat. Here you can see part of my canvas which has already been covered with some liquid clear. Just a thin coating. You see that my finger doesn't leave any kind of a trail. But over here, you can see, well, that shine just isn't there. It's nice and glossy there. And this is dull, which means this has got no liquid clear on it. I'm just using my mobile phone and a light, and as you can see, I go from a thin coat to nothing. This needs a little liquid clear on it as well. So here's my canvas, all covered in liquid clear, but I want to get that off of my 1-inch brush because I want to use this brush to apply some colour. So I'm going to take a small piece of paper towel, give it a good squeeze, and pinch out all of that liquid clear that's on this paper towel. Here's my palette. As you can see, I've just put out a few colours to get started with, but I'm going to really be using Indian yellow to start the painting off with that 1-inch brush. This is a very warm, transparent yellow colour. Perfect for a golden glow. Take a small amount to start with so we can get a feel for it. Okay, let's start up in here. As you see, being transparent, means you can rub this on really thinly, make a sort of glaze from it. If you add more, obviously, the darker colour will get. So here you see on my palette, I've used all the Indian yellow that I put out. In fact, I might even put out a little bit more. So there, my canvas is covered with a very thin, even coat of liquid clear and now some Indian yellow. Now, I'm going to go into some titanium white with that same brush with the Indian yellow on it. Now, this is one colour you do have to be careful with because being opaque, it means it can just overtake everything. It can really just block out my background painting. So I'm just putting a small amount on my brush and I'm going to pick an area right up here in the sky and just sort of have a little sort of tentative go with it. If I see it sort of starts to obliterate and cover everything up too much, if I put it on here and see everything sort of disappearing underneath it, then I know I've probably got a bit too much on my brush. I might just dry clean it a little bit. And it's better to add this in sort of small stages and to check your progress. You see, you can just push it out the way, but the idea is to put a sort of soft, misty background on and to make some of this look like it's sort of in the distance, but not to completely cover it. Just swirl it in. Henry Cat's waiting for dinner, and his way of letting us know that he's waiting is to dive in and out of his cat flap. Make a bit of a racket. I can tell you, Henny, it's not quite dinner time yet, but he knows exactly what the time is. Now, I'm going to add a little bit more colour to here, maybe a few more little swirls out here in the distance, but I'm going to move the camera from that bit. The lovely thing about this technique is that if you put on too much, you can just pick up a baby wipe and just work it away and just rub it off and start again. So it really is such a fun technique. Now, I've got a few more colours I can add if I wish to. I might actually go with a little tiny drop of red. Light red. I should have this a little bit. I put some bright red over the top of that yellow background there. See, I start to get a sort of nice pinkish, peachy blush. That's it, that's just titanium white, a little bit of Indian yellow left on my brush. And a tiny drop of red, I mean tiny, tiny drop of red. Warm blush of colour. I want some up here in the background too. Like a little bit of in crimson and all red together. That tends to produce a really sort of a warm, sort of almost maroon colour. Maybe I'll just have a bit of that. Scrub down as well. That's a really powerful colour, isn't it? That's really strong. So maybe I'll just take a little bit more off on a bit of paper towel. It's, as I said before, it's sometimes better to do a little something like that and then stop before it gets out of control. So wipe it off and then just work again over the top. I'm not too worried because I've probably put a nice tree over there. There we go. So it'll produce a nice background for me. And I'm taking some Indian yellow, bright red. That produces just the most fiery orange colour. I want it to that warm orange. Look at that. It's a fiery orange colour. Like it says autumn, like orange. I don't want to lose all my mist area though. Be careful, we can lose too much. I think some of my tree disappeared back in here, so I might just swirl back in the indication of a tree back in here. So this is a bit of a fix. Okay. Because I could have probably done a bit more with my underpainting back in here, but I didn't. I missed an opportunity. So I'm just going to push in a little bit of an orangey tree shape back in here. And just using the corner of my 1-inch brush, the brush bump and kind of leave a little bit of a kind of a pattern back in there. You see, it's incredibly fixable. I think I want to put some of these colours down in the water as well though. Now there's a little bit of white left on my brush, which can make everything a little bit murky down in here, but there's very little pure white left. But some of this orange colour I think would work really well. It's mainly transparent colours. It's alizarin crimson, which is sort of semi-transparent, Indian yellow, which is very sort of transparency sort of colours. Doesn't that look warm? I can sort of stand there and warm my hands on this one. It really feels lovely. Okay. Do I risk putting a bit of blue in there? What do you think? Not on that brush. I think that brush would really get me in trouble. Maybe let's try a little hint of blue. If I put neat blue on there, then I'm going to be almost certain to be in trouble. But if I take a fan brush, just a tiny drop of phthalo blue, I want just a suggestion, just a hint of a blue tone, no more than that. And even that might be too strong. Put a bit more white in with it. Put it over to the side. And there's some white already on there, so let's go for it. Let's see what happens. If I start to see a little hint of green though, I'll back off. So I'm just using the corner of my fan brush here, just swirling in some of this blue colour. I suppose if I get a hint of green back in there, well, there are greens in the autumn time, so it's not lost. Show that brush well back so you can see what I'm up to. So I'm just swirling this in. Now I'm pretty sure I got quite a green colour on my brush now. So I won't go back over that little piece there too much. I'm going to leave that bit alone. You see how just so little paint on my brush, but because it's got titanium white in it, it really does add some punch, doesn't it? If we get a bit of a greenish hint down here, but again, I'm using just very, very little paint here. I still want to see some of this detail coming through. I just got to literally touch and pull down. Really good. I got quite an intense spot there, so yeah, it's going to be colour in there, isn't it? There we go, just turn my brush on edge. Just kind of push it about a little bit. Got a few ripples in there. So my painting's got a real lovely sense of warmth and some bright lights coming through from behind. I've added layers of depth and distance into my painting, but everything's got a little bit sort of bright and sort of light. I really want to put back a little bit more sort of deep in the forest feel to my painting. And for that, I need a nice brown colour. So let's grab my palette. And as you see, I've got two colours, sap green and alizarin crimson. And if I mix these two together, it'll give me a lovely warm chocolatey brown colour. It's what I nicknamed Christmas brown. Think of green for the holly leaves and alizarin crimson, which is red for berries. Let's see you remember it. Christmas brown colour. It's about 50-50 mix, as you see. I start mixing these together and I get this lovely warm brown tone. Now you can go more to the green side or more to the red side, depending on what you're painting. For this, I think maybe a touch more to the red, so I'll add a little bit more crimson to my mixture and then we'll start painting the rest of the scene. So here's my Christmas brown colour, adjusted slightly with a little bit more alizarin crimson. And I'm going to be using a fan brush for this bit. And I want to load my brush really well with colour. Really groom it through that paint. You see it's nice and glossy and shiny. And make sure you do the corners really well, because we're going to be doing a few little fir trees with it. Now, in Bob's original painting, he framed it with some darker trees at the side and these lovely little fir trees right through the centre, and they were quite big. Now, I've got the sort of makings of a bit of a fir tree back here already, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to leave it in the background. I'm going to position something a little to the right of it. So let's start off by using my brush on edge, dropping in a centre line. Now, not particularly upright, got a bit of a lean to it, so decide now before you sort of start painting your tree whether you want it upright or not. Let's straighten that up a little bit. I think that looks quite good. Now, hold your fan brush on a corner. Now you can angle the handle down and press, and the curve of the brush will give you downward facing trees. But if you angle the brush handle up and press, it will give you upward facing trees with upward facing branches. I don't really mind which one I do. I kind of like upward facing ones. So I'll try and keep my arm out the way. And just on a little corner, and just press. Now this is a little bit of an autumnal sort of scene, so maybe everything's a little bit raggedy. Maybe things are a little bit past their best. So I don't really mind if my tree looks a little bit sort of bedraggled. And there you go. And you see how as I went down, I pressed a little harder, and I was doing a little bit more across here. Now, down in here, I'm going to put in some more little bushes, and a bit of undergrowth. Let's reload my brush. Give him a little friend, I think. You see all this background foliage, it just adds more depth and distance to my painting. Let's drop that in there. Always try and give yourself a bit of a centre line. And the same thing again, just pressing up with the corner of my brush. Just little touches to start with, get a few sort of crossbars. It doesn't have to be the finished tree the first time round, because this is sometimes the other way I like to paint them. See, just working one corner, little dabs. Sort of get the sort of central column in. And then once you're happy with that, you can go back over it and just add a few more little dabs. And as I want bigger branches, I press a little harder, leave a little gap, press a little harder. Now these obviously just little bars going across the centre, but what they need is a little bit more centre fill, so I'll just put a few little dabs in here, maybe sort of holding hands a little bit more at their bottom there. So there you go, two nice quick little trees, and I think I'll just join in with some more foliage, and I'll be using some more little upward pressing strokes here and there, maybe some more little bushes in here, but I just want to fill it in with some darker colours. Let's get on and put in some little bushes and things down here. Here you see how I use my fan brush just to flit around the canvas. If I have any kind of a tip to offer at this stage, it's don't sit anywhere for too long. Do a little bit here, do a little bit there. Be a little bit of an artistic butterfly. Now I want to darken my mixture a little more. So I divide my Christmas brown colour into two. I keep a bit on the side just for sort of any repairs I might need, and add some black into the main bulk of paint. This gives me a nice dark charcoal colour to work with. I'll use this for doing the extremities of the painting. Draw my eye into the centre a little bit more. Once again, be an artistic butterfly. Stand back occasionally. Whilst you're watching this tutorial, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the lovely subscribers that leave comments for me, and the wonderful donations to the coffee cup that keep the channel, well, the paint flowing, so to speak. And if that's something you want to do in the future, don't forget, you can like by giving this painting a little thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. You can even ring the little bell icon so that you get told when I produce a new video for you. Leave a comment, of course. I'd love to hear what you're working on, what you're painting, and maybe what you need help with. It inspires me to do another painting for you. So, happy painting, people! Now, whilst I've got these lovely dark trees above, my reflections are a little bit lackluster now. I don't want to actually lose too much of this lovely orangey colour, but I do need to put something in here. So with very little paint on my fan brush, you knock most of this off. Now, I know it's the sort of charcoal colour, but I think it'll work okay. And just put in the suggestion here, we don't have to be so very accurate. If you see a shape like that, then maybe just sort of put in something that sort of resembles it. It doesn't have to be particularly accurate. And if you've got a dark edge here, have a dark edge going off. Same on the other side, maybe. Got a pretty good dark edge. I mean, that corner there, I don't like that corner being left open. So again, I'm just literally going to just stab in a little bit of shadow colour in here, just for a bit of continuity. Now, do I need to reflect these trees in the water? Bob didn't. Do you think I should? You see, it's very much a case of up to you. I think I should probably put a little bit of dark in here for these couple of bushes. Yeah, just put a little bit in. Do I put those trees in? What do you think? Vote now. Let's put a little something in there. Let's just put in, and all of these as I press upwards, I'm just going to literally just do a little downward dab. But it's no more than a hint. These may be sitting further back. So again, I'm just adding a suggestion. But it doesn't need to be any more than that, really. Okay, this one's fractionally taller, maybe. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's all I need. That one leans that way, that leans that way a little bit. See, sometimes that's all we need, just to trick the eye into knowing that we've got a reflection there. I might not even bother to brush these down if it was just left to me, but I think I will. I'm just going to use a nice, clean, dry, fresh, make sure it's got no thinners on this, folks. If you touch this canvas, it's got liquid clear on it, and this has got thinners on it, you're going to see a reaction which you probably won't want to have happen. I'm going to drag a little bit of this colour down in here first of all, off that bristle bank. Just a little pull, just a little bit, and then maybe a little more through here. There's very little paint, so not a lot's going to move, and I think that's really another one of those little top tips. Don't put a ton of paint in your reflections, so when you do pull them down, you're not going to end up creating a whole big smear of colour. You see, I have to work at this a little bit to actually move any colour. Let's pull those down a little more. Hasn't that transformed my painting? Now it's got real depth and distance in it again. I did a little bit of fun stuff here with a fan brush. Maybe I'll do a little bit more with the fan brush and just kind of tease a few more of these in. But that's a top tip. Don't put too much colour in your reflections. So I've got a nice clean dry fan brush, nothing on it, and I'm just going to gently sort of tease these together. You see, this has got a nice zigzag shape and this doesn't have that zigzag shape. So maybe if I just pull a little bit of paint across there, we can make it look like zigzags. Isn't that sneaky? So now this has got a zigzag shape that sort of looks like a reflection of a fir tree. And again, I'm just going to pull this across into here. So I'm going to pull some of those darks in to meet that light. And then just move some of that light out. Isn't that a lovely subtle effect? Again, I have to pull quite hard because, well, there's not a lot of paint there. Now, as always, my mantra is, once you've finished a step, stand back and see if it needs adjustment. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm standing well behind the camera, about 10 feet away, and I'm just looking to make sure I like what I see. Does it need an adjustment? Is there anything slightly off? I'm not sure that this is quite right. Let's put a little dab of something in here. Yeah, something small like that. You know, something just small. Maybe you might just think, well, should I bother with it? There's a little mark here that I'm going to try and do something with. But take your time doing this. Stand back from your painting, make small adjustments to it, and just tweak things a little bit. Sometimes it can be the makings of your painting, just spending just a few moments just adding a few little touches here and there. And once again, I'm going to stand back and have a little look. Does anything really jump out? I mean, it's really got to jump off the canvas and smack me in the eye to want to fix it. But right now, I don't see anything particularly. Most everything is pretty good. I think I'm happy with it. So it's time to put in some little sticks and twigs next. My dark mixture here, and I've got a liner brush, but this paint's a bit too thick and dry. So I'm going to add in a drop of linseed oil, and as I say, Bob would use thinners to do this, which is fine if thinners is what you've got. Personally, I like to use linseed oil. It stays wet on my palette longer. It just gives me a little bit more workability, but it's very much up to you what you want to do. And the other reason why is because I've got liquid clear on here, and if I had a very wet, thinnery mixture of paint on here, and it was too thin, it would start reacting with the liquid clear on the canvas. So I use this more to save me getting into trouble, but I just find I can do some nicer things with with linseed oil on my brush. It doesn't dry out so quickly, so I'm just going to put in just a few little stickies and twiggy things in here, and just kind of get my painting a little bit more sort of detail at this stage. Okay, but add as many or as few as you want. I got a tree here, looks like it's kind of disembodied. I think that's supposed to be a hemlock. They have all the foliage at the very, very top, I think, and they have very long, narrow trunks. We have these sorts of pines in this country where most of it is trunk. Again, just give it a little wiggle, a little more pressure as I come down. Just want to throw a few little side branches on here. Now, one thing Bob did on his painting was he used a little filbert brush and he did some double loaded rocks in here, so dark on the bottom and a little highlight on the top. But I don't know if I actually want that for my painting. I think I might just skip that stage. I just think this looks really beautiful as it is. I love this little extra dark edge I've left under my water here, so it separates my water from my reflection. But maybe I will just drop in the suggestion of a waterline. And I've got some white with a little bit of the Indian yellow from before. This might be a little on the bright side, so I'm going to take just a little touch of this, and I'm going to use a little bit of my light brown, Christmas brown colour. I'm going to take just the tiniest little bit. You see, I just turned it into slightly milky coffee coloured here. Take a little hair of that, so it's not pure colour by any means, and I think it might be brightest kind of back in here. Now, stay level with your knife. If you're going up or down at funny angles, then your water won't look great. And I'm going just up where the darkest areas in my painting, and I'm going to just try one. I'm going to stand back. Is that too bright? I think it's okay. It's okay for that spot. But I think as I work away from that area there, I'm going to want this to be more subtle. I darkened it slightly. Maybe that, just catch a little bit more light on there. Apologies if you can't see this on camera, but that's the sort of thing. You don't always want to see everything. Not everything needs to jump off the canvas and smack you in the eye like that. A little bit bright, but okay, I live with it. The great thing is I can just rub it into the painting. But there's a lot of subtle detail in my painting which doesn't always stand out on film. I've got a colour here which is a little bit more towards the yellow side. I'll just pop a few of those little sparklers in. Well, we are talking tiny little bits of paint in here. You can add some highlights in here. You could add some little zingers of light through here. You could go crazy with this, but I like it nice and simple. I like the depth and distance. I like to think my painting is sort of kind of mysterious. So with that, I think I have a finished painting. Well, I hope my little tutorial inspired you to get out your brushes and have a go at something like this. It's a painting that's not as hard as it looks. But in the meantime, there's some more lovely videos for you to watch coming right along. Happy painting, people.